Project Management for Healthcare Managers, Week 3, Leadership, HTML 375. Leadership is the ability to join with others and initiate meaningful means toward meaningful ends. Many of the definitions of leadership are to lead without the detail of what leading actually means. Literally, leading means to be out in front, but there are different styles and methods for being a leader. There are different actions for leaders to take: management, facilitating, coaching, mentoring, and teaching. And good leadership includes all these skills, but leadership includes those actions that rely on good interpersonal and relationship management skills, communicating concepts like urgency and alignment, and to build trust. This section defines leadership actions, gives some examples of approaches to understanding good leadership that have been identified by some leading resources, and to define the skills of what a good leader needs to have. Being part of a boss is to manage, or to do things right. Some of the activities we see leaders doing are planning, measuring, and monitoring. What you're going to do, and how you measure success. There are also some basic managerial functions such as hiring and firing, coordinating with other departments, and resolving resource roadblocks. The coordinating functions seem to take most of the manager's focus and time, mostly because of the staffing and coordination takes collaborative effort between departments to be able to get a satisfactory outcome. Take hiring, for example. It is usually up to another department, the human resource department, to manage most of the tasks for hiring someone new, but the hiring manager needs to be involved in the process, identify the needs and expectations, and is involved in the interview process. An effective process includes alignment and coordination to get the right person for the job. The HR can't do it alone, and the hiring manager doesn't know all the acceptable hiring practices. This management function succeeds when it is shared. These functions that require meeting and communication between other departments is the shared planning, measuring, and monitoring skills that are highly dependent on the time and effort by the manager. Being intentional about planning and action produces successful and effective outcomes, rather than allowing outside actions and influence to dominate the flow of work. Once the plan is set, this constantly needs to be checked by making measurements and monitoring the results as you go, instead of waiting until the end to see if you've landed in hopes to land in the place that you plan to go. Good project management has planning, measuring, and monitoring baked into best practices and can provide a good model for any healthcare manager. Facilitation are the skills to manage group processes. A facilitator can be brought in to help a group make a decision or to decide on a process, but they don't own the specific outcomes. In leadership and management, facilitation is a part of the process, to own the outcomes and to manage the group processes. Communication is critical in making decisions and encouraging buy-in and alignment, and facilitation is about understanding team dynamics and to encourage participation. For example, good leaders will be able to get consensus, a solution that makes that everyone can buy into. So, consensus may not be everyone's top choice, but the choice that everyone can live with because everyone has had the opportunity to give their concerns and be heard. A good leader needs to have some facilitation skills and to be able to lead teams. Leaders also need to understand how to grow knowledge and experience within their organization and their team. Understanding the different learning modes and creating a leadership approach that uses a variety of learning modes can improve communication, motivation, and trust within a department or team. The approaches given differ in who owns the learning. Teaching is owned by the teacher. They determine the approach to giving and training and are expected to have greater knowledge that will flow to the learner. The teacher takes most of the responsibility for the learning. The coach is also an expert and has higher skill than the learner, but the responsibility for the training methods and outcomes are shared by the trainer and the learner. One good coaching approach is to press the learner on what they think the problem is and what they should do next, and then allow them to fill in the gaps. In mentoring, the learner takes on the responsibility for the learning. They seek specific knowledge from an expert. Good mentoring should be managed by the mentee, including the subjects that the mentee needs to know, and the method and duration that the mentee needs to be able to have to gather the right information. Interpersonal skills are those functions that individuals use to manage their relationships. The key interpersonal skills that the PMBOK identifies to be an effective project manager is the ability to lead, to influence, to make effective decisions, to build trust, and to manage conflict. Leadership and facilitation need to be integrated skills to manage team dynamics. And the approaches to leadership that follow give some important leadership traits to follow. Working with teams, which are a collection of individuals, needs to have focus on two areas. Groups of people need someone to help manage the interpersonal functions such as decision making and conflict management. But leaders also need to manage the individuals and understand the different ways people understand and align to trust and conflict. One of the concepts of team dynamics is a stage at which a team progresses and matures to become highly functioning. When a group of people gets together, such as when a project is started, the new group is formed. The boundaries are set of who is included, and there is low task energy and low process energy. If the group has to do something and they need to start working together, the storming starts to happen. Storming is characterized by team members trying to figure out their roles. Why am I here? What part do I play? Who is the leader? This storming phase has high process energy, and the group members are putting their effort into understanding how they'll fit into the group. Task energy is really about what you do, and process energy is how you work together. The leader can help the group process this by identifying what each role is, how people will communicate, and who will make a decision. The next stage is norming, which is where the task is the focus. What will be done? What are the steps? The leader can promote good norming by giving the group specific goals or outcomes. It is especially effective if the leader understands the motivations of the team members and can align the outcome of the task to the personal needs of the group members. Once the roles are defined and accepted, and the task is to get to the goal is an agreement, the group can start to perform. These actions happen in varying and subtle ways, and a group can regress to the first stage when new team members are added. The next sections are some different styles or approaches to leadership. None of these are wrong or better, they're just different ways of viewing leadership. Drucker focuses on making effective decisions. Lee is about building synergy. Bowman and Deal is an analytical approach to leadership. And Kouzes and Posner is more of an emotional, thoughtful approach to leadership. Peter Drucker came to America and started consulting for General Motors in 1943. He ended up writing a book on effective management and leadership, and then went to Japan to share his experience. One of his central theories is that executives make decisions based on dissenting opinions and challenging facts. This approach becomes the heart of empowerment. He also believed that you should set the right priorities. Not many different priorities, but the one or two things that are really important. And then you should be able to answer what you are doing that justifies your being on the payroll. Focusing on that contribution to the customers. What do you contribute to the customer? He also believed that hiring the right people and letting them do what they hired them for. Don't tell them what to do, and don't make them guess. Set the expectations of what the outcome needs to be, and then get out of the way. Also included is his priority to manage time ruthlessly. Don't waste your time, and don't waste your employees' times. Drucker's style of leadership focuses on what the leader's job includes, to make decisions, and then let the employees do what they are hired to do. Larry Lee is a local PhD that worked for Boeing and focused on developing synergy through leadership. Like the rest of the leadership styles, trust is important to build. Trust isn't something that just happens, it's an intentional attitude of authenticity, integrity, and consistency. This is the cornerstone of synergy. The three parts that produce a path to synergy is having the right people who have the knowledge and skill to do something well, the processes that allow them to exceed, and the constant focus on that process. Without the right tools and the motivation to want to contribute toward a mutual purpose would really be, the motivation and ability to contribute to a mutual purpose is the final step. The overall goal of these factors to improve the process and show that people aren't the problem after the process gets in their way. Expanding your knowledge and keeping an open mind and building intrinsic goals of motivation are really key to producing synergy. The people make this happen, but the leader's responsibility is to grow self-directed teams for these three different efforts to occur. Lee Bolman and Terence Deal are professors, and they were both directors at the National Center for Educational Leadership. Their approach is more analysis-directed, more thinking-time structured behaviors. They produce a frame that is present in every organization, and this frame is used to understand the framework of leadership or that works against it. On one axis is the axis of power, from the structural frame to the human resource frame. The structural frame really looks at what is the organization, who has the power. It's really based on who needs to be listening to what as far as the structural element goes. The human resource frame is really about who gets things done. What are those groups of people that work together to actually have that have the ability to get things done, and then how is their power and leadership exhibited through the organization? The other axis is the axis of power within an organization. That power can be expressed in two different dimensions. There can be the symbolic frame of how power is maintained and the forces of the company are created and maintained through risks, rituals, and legends. If we think back to culture, how the company was formed, what are the important symbols and legends that happen really affect how culture gets developed within an organization. At the other end is the political frame. And the political frame, according to Bolman and Deal, is a collection of the vision or collective goals of the leaders of the organization. Rather than looking at those at power through what the organization has gone through in the past, looking at power from the lens of who's currently in charge, who has the power, and what are they trying to influence the organization to do. Kouzes and Posner. James Kouzes was the director of executive development, and Barry Posner was a professor of organizational behavior. Together, they came through and put together a book on leadership called The Leadership Challenge. The focus of the Leadership Challenge really relies on high credibility and the amount of credibility a leader can demonstrate through an organization. To have high credibility, you have to have pride and ownership in what you do. They see emotions as being part of this approach. Each approach has 5 steps, each having an internally directed state and an externally directed state. The 5 states are, first, to challenge the process. We see that challenging of the process being exhibited early or externally in that pioneer type of attitude of being able to provoke the process. But internally, everyone is learning and gaining knowledge about the process. The second step is to inspire a shared vision. And so what we see on the outside, we see externally, is leaders enlisting others and trying to get people to work toward a common goal. But internally, they're trying to coordinate the emotional, trying to understand and align with what is the emotional characteristics of the organization. The third step is to enable others to act. What you see leaders doing in this step is that they're strengthening others, encouraging what they're running to do, and internally they're looking to for opportunities for people to collaborate. Modeling the way is really to setting those examples, modeling that behavior that really needs to happen, and then internally to be able to plan small wins, to see how to leverage the examples and to be able to plan small wins so that that modeling gets that reinforced to the people that they're trying to lead. And then finally, that encouraging the heart, where individuals are recognized and teams are celebrated. Getting things done by directing actions or behaviors because of who you are and not the positional control you have is what influencing is all about. Influence is when people want to do things for you, not because they have to. Any leader that uses influence over control finds that they encourage buy-in and increase motivation. This is a key leadership skill, especially when positions don't grant authority. Good relationship management builds influence, and there are many ways and styles to increase influence. One way is to lead by example, to model behavior and set the expectation that you want others to follow this example. Other features is to follow through with commitment and to have integrity to just do what you say you're going to do. When leaders are clear about how decisions are made, they help build trust and influence. Not being rigid, but having the flexibility to listen and change as needed is a key. The goal of influence is working together, not maintaining control. Another key skill in dynamic leadership is the ability to negotiate. There are actually 2 types of negotiation: competitive negotiation, collaborative negotiation. Competitive negotiation is about win or lose, whereas collaboration is win-win. This second type of negotiation, collaborative negotiation, is what supports good leadership. The steps in collaborative negotiation are to understand and analyze the situation and see what are the positions. Part of this analysis is about understanding the wants and needs, and being able to focus on the issue and not make things personal. There may be an overall limitation that needs to be understood. The most important skill is to be able to listen and understand, to see it from both ways and come up with a solution or outcome where both parties feel like they have won. Another way of thinking about win-win is not to have each person get everything they ask for, but come up with an outcome where everyone involved can live with the outcome. Part of leadership is about making decisions. We heard from Peter Drucker that effective decisions is one of the executive primary functions. This is the way decisions are made. There's not one way of making decisions that are better. Each has specific features that will help or hinder buy-in. The first approach to making decisions is command, where the decision will be made by the leader. This is great when the leaders are the experts or they're fully informed, but sometimes they're going off old information. Having good communication and building trust is baked into making good command decisions. The next type is consultative, where the group, with or without the leader, makes the decisions. This is typically voting, and the majority gets to decide on the outcome. In this style of decision making, the leader gives up control of the outcome of the decision and empowers the team to make the decision. Being clear that a majority vote will be the course of action is a great way to encourage the team to be involved, but the leader has to be prepared to live with the outcome. It destroys integrity when a leader invalidates a group decision. There are a variety of ways voting can be organized and managed, such as polling or balloting. The main theme is that the majority will win. Another type of making decisions is consensus. Consensus is also about the leader giving control to the team, but the outcome is negotiated until everyone is heard and can live with the decision. Consensus usually takes more time than voting, but usually there's more buy-in alignment that comes from consensus. Coin flip is random, that the leader and team has no control over the outcome. Usually not seen as the best way of making a decision, sometimes used when the outcome or the stakes are not high and people are too tied to their position to be able to use another way of voting. Last week when I talked about trust, I gave some factors of building trust from Brené Brown. These factors apply in leadership and can be seen in organizational behaviors. Some of the actions we see when there's high trust is open communication. This comes from keeping people informed, being direct and authentic in your communication, and willing to share information even when you're wrong. Communication is the most significant factor in encouraging the factors of trust, and the more we do it, the more intentional we practice the skills, the more we build trust. There is also something about trust that is more than communication. It's the ability to look beyond our own interests and build mutual purpose. This creates the cornerstone for being able to apply the trust-building skill. It helps them make sense. Good leadership isn't about everything going perfectly. It's also about being flexible and resilient when things go bad. Flexibility can be seen when approaching with an open mind, and resiliency is getting back on your feet after something goes wrong. It's about dealing with conflict when there is an agreement. When people take sides, there are different ways to approach conflict. These are some different ways that people will respond to a conflicting situation. Some will withdraw or avoid the conflict. Hopefully they can come back at a later time and come up with an approach that allows discussion without that high emotion. Some people approach conflict as smoothing or accommodating, which is about agreeing or giving up your position because the relationship is more important than the issue. This also has drawbacks and is limited in getting people involved. Compromising or reconciling is really about everybody giving up a little. This isn't really such a bad thing, but it also means that instead of win-win, everybody loses a little bit. Their compromise causes loss of people's needs. Forcing or directing. Some people are very competitive and will seek to get their way and not put the value on the relationship but the outcome of what the dispute is. And another way people approach it is collaborative or problem solving. This is that win-win approach. But you need high trust with good communication. One of the drawbacks of collaboration is that if you're dealing with someone that turns competitive, the collaborative partner the collaborative partner will usually end up losing because the competitive partner, the one that's forcing or directing, will have more of a focus on their own needs instead of needs that will benefit both parties. To review, we talked about leadership as having different styles. We talked about how it's important to understand team dynamics and how people work together. Interpersonal skills are those people skills, to be able to listen and work with others. And then to have different approaches shows leadership from the different perspectives. And then there are leadership skills that can improve communication and build trust, including negotiation, decision making, and conflict management.